Hey Cedardale Nation, how is it going? My name is Samantha McCarthy and I'm one of the registered dietitians at Cedardale, and I'm here for another Facebook Live cooking demo for you. So if you've seen some of my videos in the past, thanks for watching. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some different recipes. Our topic for this cooking demo is going to be whole grains. So if you are a member of the club and you've been around the club and have seen our nutrition table that's been out for the month of March, you have probably noticed a whole bunch of handouts on fiber and on whole grains, as that is our big topic for this month that we decided to focus on. And I know that whole grains can be something that is really tough for some people to incorporate. I'm not really sure what to do with them, how to cook them, how to even find them in the grocery store. So I'll be giving you some tips as we go along. I'm going to go through 4 different recipes today. I'm going to briefly show you some tips and tricks on cooking these recipes, along with some nutrition tips. So let's go ahead and get started. If you're on the live broadcast, feel free to share your questions as we go along, and you'll be able to find all of these recipes on our website once we have the post up and ready to go. All right, so first things first, our very first recipe that we're going to look at is a buckwheat maple pecan granola. So this is really delicious. If you've never made homemade granola, it's really awesome. It's one of those things that you can really customize to your own liking. What kind of nuts, what kind of grains do you want to use? And you can also control the sugar, because if you've ever looked at the package on granola, you've probably noticed really quickly that it's very high in sugar, a lot of the store-bought ones, whereas this one, when you look at the nutrition facts information, and again, this will be posted, the sugars are really only 8 grams, and that doesn't really count added sugars because we use maple syrup. So I actually already have the granola cooking in the oven, but I'm going to show you the ingredients right here. So you can see we've got some pumpkin seeds, some buckwheat groats. I'll talk about those in a second. Some pecans, ginger, cinnamon, maple syrup, old-fashioned oats, vanilla, and also ground nutmeg. So it's very simple to do the recipe. All you have to do is mix together the wet ingredients, mix together the dry ingredients, and then you put it on a cookie sheet and let it cook in the oven. So it's actually going to be ready, it looks like, in about 15 minutes. So as soon as that timer goes off, I will bring it out so you can see it and see what it looks like. But if you're not familiar with buckwheat, buckwheat is actually a great grain. It's just, the groats are a nice texture. So when you're making granola, it can add a nice different texture than the traditional oats that are often used. It adds a little different, like more of a little bit nutty flavor, some different nutrients in there, some more fiber in there. However, it is sometimes tricky to find in the grocery store. So I actually got the buckwheat groats online. And one thing that's really important to know, that even though the name implies that it's wheat, it's actually not. So it's a great option for a lot of people, especially if you're gluten-free. So we'll take a look at that granola when it's ready. The next recipe that we're going to tackle, that maybe you've seen, is the bulgur protein bowl. So this is one that I often do for meal prep. So if you're someone that needs to meal prep for lunch because you're busy throughout the week, or you want to meal prep dinner ahead of time for the weekend or for the family, this is a great easy recipe. Okay, so the ingredients include a rotisserie chicken. So I've already gone ahead and shredded that rotisserie chicken. You'll see we're going to use some bulgur. We have chicken broth that we're going to use, some tomato paste, peppers and onions already chopped up. I've got salt, a little bit of pepper thrown in there, and that's pretty much it. So it's quite basic to do this recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the screen here. All right, so what we're gonna do on this one is we're actually gonna start by toasting the bulgur. Now, if you've ever seen that in recipes, like to toast bulgur or to toast any other grain, maybe even toast something like nuts before you use them, it's a great way to bring out a little flavor. Is it required? No, it's not required, but I highly recommend it because it makes things taste just a little enhancement in the flavor. All right, so we use for this recipe, because it's more of a meal prep recipe, it's quite big. So when you look at the recipe on the actual page, you might want to cut it in half or even cut it in a third, because this is going to make a really big portion. So for me, this is great. This is going to last me 5 days, so Monday through Friday for my lunches, which is really awesome. Okay. So that pan is heating up. I'm going to put 2 cups of bulgur dry in the pan. All I have in the pan right now is just a little bit of cooking spray. I use avocado oil spray when I'm cooking for my non-stick cooking spray. Typically I use avocado oil or olive oil for cooking. Usually olive oil is going to be for things that don't use a lot of high heat. So I'm going to use it for baking. I'm going to use it for dressings, which you'll see towards the end here. So I'm going to use it for things that aren't really going to require like high heat roasting, stir fry, or something of that sort. So when you toast a grain, you really want to keep a close eye on it. Give it a little stir, especially depending on the on how strong your stove top is, because you don't want it to burn, and it can burn very quickly. Okay, so you want to be careful of that. So I'm just going to stir this up. Once I start to smell it, like you'll notice it starts to get a little toasted. You can probably find the scent in the air. Then I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. You know, some grains, like bulgur, for example, this one, it's brown. It's a darker to medium to dark brown, I'd say. So sometimes it's hard to pick up on that toasting right away. So you just kind of keep a close eye on it. And like I said, wait for that smell. Once that comes in, then I'm going to be adding in the chicken broth. And this is all going to cook in the pan along with the chicken. And then we're going to cook the veggies on the side. And that's pretty much it. Once the bulgur is cooked in probably like 20 minutes or so, that's it. It's all done. You throw it all together, so it's really quick and easy. So that's a nice option for people. All right, so we're taking a look at this bulgur. So we're going to be adding in our chicken broth next. So I usually grab just a low sodium chicken broth at the grocery store. You can use vegetable broth if you prefer, but we are using chicken in this recipe, so I like to use chicken broth, and that's usually what I have on hand. If I have some of my own broth, which I often make with chicken bones, then I'll use that too, but right now I do not have any on hand. All right, so it is looking pretty good. So now I'm going to take the broth and I'm going to go ahead and add it in. The recipe calls for 4 cups, which is the size of this box. Here, that nice sizzle. Pan is nice and warm. All right. Stir that in a little bit. Okay. All right, so I've got that broth added in there. The next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna add a little bit of tomato paste. So I'm gonna mix this right in. It calls for a tablespoon, or roughly a tablespoon. So I'm just gonna put that right in there, and I'm gonna mix it around a little bit. Okay. All right, so that is looking pretty good. It's starting to warm up. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this all come to a simmer. And then we're going to cook it basically until the bulgur is all cooked together, 15-ish minutes or so. So you'll see here, this is a full rotisserie chicken that I used, and I pre-shredded it. So I just had it right from the store, took it all off the bones. I removed the skin as well, so removed some of the fatty parts of the chicken. And now I'm just going to add it in, so all this flavor is going to get cooked together. Probably not going to add all of this though, because it is quite a bit. The rotisserie chicken I grabbed was a lot bigger than some of the other ones. I love rotisserie chicken because it's so convenient, and it's cheap. So if you're on a budget, it's a really great option. Yes, it's a little bit higher sodium, so if you are watching your sodium intake, I would be cautious of that. But if you're not, if you're a fairly healthy, active individual, don't worry about it. You know, use that rotisserie chicken to your advantage. All right, I'm going to add a little bit more looking at the recipe, or looking at my pan here. I think it could. There we go. All right, so let me show you what it looks like if you can't see very well from the video. All right, so you can see that you see a little bit of that tomato paste in there. The bulgur is sinking to the bottom, and that's about the ratio of the chicken that I'm looking for. So, like I said, we're going to let that cook for about 15 minutes or so. I'm going to keep an eye on it to make sure that it doesn't get too hot. Once it starts to bubble, I want to turn it down to a simmer. Otherwise, the bulgur can kind of get stuck to the bottom, and we don't want that to happen, do we? Then it can get a little mushy, which we don't want. All right, so that is that. Now honestly, the last step in this recipe is to saute the peppers and the onions. And then once this is all done, the bulgur's cooked, then we mix it together and voila, in approximately 30 minutes, maybe less, you've got a nice meal for 5 days for your meal prep lunches. It's pretty awesome. All right, so I'm gonna get these peppers and onions going, and then we'll start our next recipe. And if you are on the live, if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat or comments. All right, so I've got my avocado oil. That's what I'm going to use to saute the peppers and the onions. So I'm going to put this in the pan, and then I'm just going to let that heat up a little bit. I already chopped the peppers and the onions, so it should be pretty quick. I like a nice little sear and softening. I don't like my vegetables cooked too much, so it doesn't really take too long. All right, I can see the bulgur is starting to cook up pretty well. Bulgur is one of those whole grains that does cook pretty quick. Some whole grains take a really long time. So when you think about like wild rice, like wheat berries, like some of the, I'm trying to think what else, some other things that can just often take like an hour to cook, which is, you know, if you have the time, great. It's pretty hands off to cook whole grains, but still you have to have that hour available. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and toss my peppers in here, and I'm also gonna toss those onions in there as well. So I'm using stainless steel pans. If anybody is wondering, these are my favorite. If I was a little bit nervous about getting them for quite a few years. I knew I wanted them, I knew they cooked better, but I was really kind of hesitant about my cooking skills for a while. But now that I have these stainless steel pans, I will absolutely never go back to the non-stick except for eggs. Eggs is the only thing that we'll use the non-stick for. But these are just fantastic. They cook so well. And as long as you feel comfortable with them, the key is you do have to use a decent amount of oil, but a little bit of oil is not going to kill you. Well, a little bit of oil is actually quite healthy for you. And then just keep moving things, and you'll be good. And you get used to those pans. All right, so the bulgur is cooking up quite nicely. All right, so while those cook, let's start talking about our next recipe. So the next recipe that we're going to look at is, it sounds like it's been a fan favorite with the people at the club at Cedardale that I've talked to. It's called Mediterranean Vegetable Quinoa Bake. And again, it's another really simple recipe. It looks complicated, there's a lot of ingredients. However, the simplicity of it is that it all goes into one pan, which is the best. You cook it in one pan. That's less dishes, which always makes my husband a little happier because he does all the dishes for me. So the less pans I can use, the better. All right, this is starting to look really yummy, and it smells delicious as well. I will show you. I have my lovely daughter right here. Say hi, Amelia. She is really enjoying this. She can smell it all. She's quite hungry. She's got home from school. And she can't wait to eat all of this. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you've probably seen Amelia as a little toddler chomping away at peppers. She still loves her peppers, and she cannot wait to eat this when it's done. So that is always a fun thing. Now, however, my 4-year-old, he's 4-year-old at the time, he is not as great of an eater as my little Amelia is. My Amelia will eat anything, whereas my 4-year-old will not eat very much. Typical picky eater. All right, so let's go back to this Mediterranean vegetable quinoa bake. So what we're gonna do for this recipe, it's pretty simple. You add the vegetables, okay? So I've chopped a whole bunch of vegetables. So the recipe actually calls for artichokes, we've got zucchini in there, we've got peppers, we've got onions, and there are cherry tomatoes in there. You can really customize it. You can do whatever you want. You can put broccoli, you can put cauliflower, you can put asparagus in there, mushrooms. It's really customizable. Same thing with the bulgur bowl that we've been cooking. You really customize it to how you would like it. Now you'll see these are chopped. You don't really want to dice. You want to keep them a little bit bigger when you chop these, which I love those kind of recipes because it doesn't take as long. So that's always fantastic. All right, so what we're going to do with this is we are going to take it and we're going to be putting it into a baking dish with the quinoa. Okay, so what you'll see here is I have tricolor quinoa. This is the bag, okay? So I have it in a strainer here. If you don't have one of these at home, I highly recommend it for one of your kitchen tools. A lot of the grains you do want to rinse before you use, and quinoa is one of them. So I've already rinsed it, okay? And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna put it in the baking dish. Granola is almost done, 3 minutes left on that timer. All right, so I'm gonna put this quinoa right in the bottom of the baking dish here. I'm just gonna spread it around a little bit so that it's in the dish. I love the tricolor because it just looks really pretty. So that's always nice. The vegetables are already chopped, but before I put them in the pan with the quinoa, we're gonna add some oil and we're gonna add some really yummy spices in there. First, let's go back to our bulgur. So these vegetables are looking pretty well cooked. I might let them cook just a little bit more. What do you think, Amelia? You think they look good? They smell good? Yeah. Let me show you how the bulgur is looking with the chicken, so you can see how it's bubbling there. Every time I do that, I say, I hope my cell phone holder holds up and does not fall into my food. I'll just be careful, I guess. All right. So I'm going to give that another minute or two, let those peppers soften just a touch more. Okay, let's go back to our Mediterranean quinoa here. Okay, so I've got this bowl here. I'm gonna go ahead and add in some olive oil. So I got this right here. So since we're baking this and it's not gonna go super high temperature, I am gonna use olive oil versus avocado oil, but honestly you can do whatever you prefer. I just like the flavor of olive oil better if I can use it. I'm gonna put some basil in there. The amounts of all of these is like roughly a teaspoon of all these spices. This is fresh basil from my garden that I dried, so I still have it, so it's really nice and flavorful. I'm going to put a little more than a teaspoon because I like it, and that's perfectly fine when you are cooking. You can do whatever you want. I've got a little oregano here. I'm going to add this. Okay. We're also going to put some garlic powder in there. You could use fresh garlic if you prefer, but garlic powder is always great if you don't feel like chopping fresh garlic or you're pressed for time. Okay, so I've got all those in there. Last thing I'm going to put is a little bit of salt and pepper, of course, which you can put, you know, as much or as little as you want here. So I'm not going to put like a ton on there because we are going to use some broth and some stock that has a little bit of sodium in it. And then I'm going to put a little black pepper. Optional for the recipe is crushed red pepper, which is going to give it a little bit of a spice if you like that. I'm not going to add that because my children are eventually going to eat this. They don't love those spicy flavors, so I'm not going to add that in there so that they will actually eat this. All right, let's head back over here to the stove before I mix that. All right, this is looking pretty good now. And my bulgur is actually almost done too. So what I'm looking for is to see that most of the liquid has been absorbed. Probably maybe another few minutes on that. 5 minutes most. All right, the timer just went off on the granola, so let's take a look at this. All right, so let me see here. Now, what you want to be careful of with granola, because of the sugar that goes into it, is you really want to keep a close eye on it to make sure that it doesn't burn. So I was just looking at it and it's pretty close. So I think it's just perfect for me to take it out of the oven. So let's take a look here. All right. So see it. You can see this granola here. So we've got those pumpkin seeds, the pecans, the buckwheat groats. You can't. They're small, so you can't really see them, but they are definitely mixed in with all of that. All right, it is. I think it needs a couple more minutes. It's still a little bit soft, so I'm going to add it in, but keep a close eye on it so it doesn't burn. So we'll do another 5 minutes or so here. Make sure I set my timer so I don't forget, especially since I'm cooking a few other things at the same time. All right, so back over here. All right, let's go ahead and mix all this together here. No, you getting hungry over there? Yeah. All right, so mix all the spices and the oil together for the veggies, and then we're going to put it into our baking dish. with the broth. Now, the other thing I forgot to mention is the Rayo's, the tomato sauce. So that is also going into the recipe, and the tomato sauce is definitely key on this one to add that little extra burst of flavor that can make it really yummy. I've been told by quite a few people that they don't like the taste of quinoa. And one thing I always say when you're working with these whole grains, quinoa, rice, oats, the buckwheat, the bulgur, the farro that you're going to see last, the key is really add flavor, okay? You probably don't really want to eat plain oats, right? Because they're plain. They're a little bit boring, right? Plain white rice, it's kind of boring, you know, you want to add a little flavor. It's the same thing when we're working with any of these other whole grains. You want to add flavor, and don't be afraid of that, to add some flavors. So, all right, so we've got the vegetables. I have mixed a cup of Rayo's tomato sauce with vegetable stock, okay? I've whisked them together in this bowl, so you can see it right here. And we're gonna put this all over the quinoa in our baking dish. So let's take a look here, okay? So we'll put the vegetables first. This is a great dish too because it's all in one, right? You've got your starch and you've got your veggies all mixed in together. So all you need is maybe just a little bit of protein. I'm gonna mix this, or we're gonna have some grilled chicken along with it, probably tomorrow night. And that will be the meal. So you can also make this if you're a vegan. Quinoa is a great source of complete protein, so you could add in like tofu, or you could add some legumes or lentils in here to boost up the protein a little bit, and this is a great like vegan dish. All right, so I've got my broth, I've got my tomato sauce in this bowl. We're gonna pour it all over the veggies and the quinoa. So the key is to make sure that the quinoa is covered in the sauce, the broth and the tomato sauce, or stock, I should say, the tomato sauce, because the quinoa is not cooked yet. So when it goes into the oven, we want that sauce to be able to cook all the quinoa, okay? So the way I'm gonna do that, I'm just gonna make sure I kind of like push everything down in here so that everything is somewhat covered by some liquid. The vegetables on the top don't necessarily need to have the liquid on them, that's okay. All right, let me just get all this sauce off of me here. All right, so when that granola comes out, we are actually gonna put the quinoa bake into the oven. The oven's gonna go up to 400 degrees. Right now, the granola is cooking at 325. It's at a little bit lower temperature because we don't want it to burn. But then this is gonna go in at 400 degrees, and it cooks for quite a while. So it's gonna cook for about 50 to 60 minutes to allow everything to soften with the vegetables and allow the quinoa to cook. If you're using quinoa on the stovetop and you're just cooking it with some water, with some broth, it actually cooks pretty quickly, but because of all the stuff in this dish, it's gonna take a little bit longer to get everything nice and soft. All right, so let's go back over to our bulgur recipe over here. I think it's pretty much done. Let's look here. Where is that spoon? I think I put my spoon in the sink. I've got lots of veggies, or lots of dishes for my husband to come home to. He'll be thrilled. All right, so let's see. I'm just kind of like digging in here to see if there is liquid, and there is not any liquid. So look at that, that's already done. We are gonna turn that off, and that's gonna be ready to go. So like I said, we're now gonna marry this with the vegetables, and I have my lunch for next week. So if anybody's wondering what I'll be eating at the office at Cedardale next week, it will be this. Sometimes I'll add different vegetables to this dish. I love leafy greens, so I like to add in like either spinach or kale, like a nice roasted broccoli or cauliflower. Something could go in here. You could add some nice roasted tomatoes or peppers, you know, the jarred peppers you can get. And now we've got this delicious dish here, nice and colorful with the colored peppers, the onions, and I think my daughter is waiting for a little plate. Yes? Yes? All right, let's get you a little plate, honey. All right, I did hear that timer go off on our granola, so we'll take a look at that. All right, so you can see here, we got some delicious chicken, rotisserie chicken, the nice high fiber bulgur in there, peppers, onions. It's delicious, pretty simple. All right, it's gonna be hot, honey, careful. Okay, all right, let's go take a look at our granola, shall we? We should be pretty close done on this one. All right, let's see here. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Let's just touch it and see if it's nice and crispy. I believe it is nice and crispy. It is crispy enough. All right, very good. We're gonna leave it there. So what you're gonna wanna do is just let it cool. So I'm gonna let that cool for quite a while, probably at least an hour before I package it up and get it ready to go for yogurt or cereal or just a snack. All right, so I'm putting the oven up to 400 and I'm gonna be putting that quinoa in just a moment. We'll cook those. So the last thing is a really quick recipe that I really will just show you how to get ready because it's very simple and it's, again, another one of my favorites meal prep recipes. So let me show you the recipe that we have here. All right, so it's called an autumn farro salad. Okay, so what we do with this recipe is we make the base of the salad and then we cook the farro. Okay, so I haven't really talked much about cooking the whole grains by themselves because we kind of have mixed things together. So in this recipe, you actually cook the farro by itself. So this is what farro looks like. I often get Bob's Red Mill for a lot of these brands. He's just got some great products. So farro is one of my favorite whole grains. Okay, it's quite small. And it's very nutty and it adds a nice texture, especially to this salad. This salad is by far my favorite salad. So what we do for the base of the salad is you're gonna get some kind of green. The recipe calls for baby kale. I often use just regular kale though, just regular raw kale. So you de-stem it, chop it up nice and small, and if not, you can use baby kale. This is a lot easier. You can also use arugula or you could do a mix of the two. Those would be nice bases for this salad, okay? The other things that we're gonna add in, kind of top the salad with, we're gonna use clementines for this. You're also gonna get some nice dried cranberries. We're gonna use the pecans, which are over here from our other recipe as well. So you're gonna use the pecans, but you can use any nut that you prefer on top. And then we make our own dressing. Now, with all of these ingredients, oh, and I forgot the apples. You can do diced apples in this as well. If you're a texture person, this salad is like texture heaven. I mean, there's so many different things going on with our toppings. It's really yummy. But my very favorite part of this is actually the dressing. So you make a homemade dressing with this, and the recipe calls is very basic. You use olive oil, you use honey, you go with apple cider vinegar, but you could use a different type of vinegar if you don't have it. It's gonna be some lemon juice in there and just a touch of salt and pepper. And the pepper is key because it adds a nice little bite to it that's really interesting. And I just love that dressing. If you've never made homemade dressing before, I highly recommend it. I use one of these shaker bottles for these. You know, you put the little top on and then it pours right out of it. There is nothing like a homemade dressing. I mean, in a pinch, of course, I have bottled, store-bought dressings, but these in the shaker bottles that you make yourself, which is some basic like vinegar, lemon, oil, some spices and salts, it just tastes so fresh and so delicious. So while I won't put all of these things together, because I don't want to take all of your time, I highly recommend give this recipe a shot. It's absolutely delicious. You're gonna love salads again. If you've been sick of them, this one will make you like them. And I do usually put a little extra protein. I'll usually put chicken, some grilled chicken on top of it, in addition to all the other toppings. Okay. All right, so that is our cooking demo for today. So last things to wrap it up is the recipes are all available on our website. So if you go to cedardale.net or you can click the link, it's in our Facebook profile. go right to the nutrition page. Underneath our nutrition tip, you'll find all of these recipes. This video will be recorded, and it's eventually going to be uploaded into our YouTube page, so you can come back and view it again. But otherwise, I thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you learned some great things about how to cook and also some whole grains. And have a lovely day. Oh, Amelia wants to say bye. All right. Thanks, everybody.